Hi everyone, welcome to the final video of Chapter 8 and our final video of Unit 2 material. Here we'll be talking about the pelvic girdle and the lower limb. So I want you guys to be able to identify the bones of the pelvic girdle and the leg and foot and describe a few of the major features, and then also to be able to tell some of the big differences between the male and female pelvic girdle and why those are important. So the pelvic girdle itself, your hips, if we were using a common term, your pelvic girdle is composed of 3 bones, okay? So we've already talked about the sacrum, okay? So your sacrum is the 5 fused sacral vertebra. But also we have the 2 hips, or the coxal bones, okay? And we can also call these the ossa coxae bones, or also the innominate bones. So few different words here: coxal, ossa coxae, and innominate. Okay, and they join together with the sacrum to form the pelvic girdle. So when I say pelvis, I'm talking about the pelvic girdle, those 3 bones, plus the ligaments and the muscles that make up the floor of the pelvic cavity. This one's pretty important. I want you guys to know what the sacroiliac joint is. Okay, so your sacroiliac joint is where the coxal bone, where your hip bone, is articulating with the vertebral column. Okay, so you have sacroiliac joint on the left and one on the right, kind of at the base of your lower back. If you have back pain, more off to the sides than in the center of your back, it's very possibly your sacroiliac joint that is giving you problems. Okay, so the place where the sacrum articulates with those coxal bones are the sacroiliac joints. Okay, the pubic symphysis is the cartilage, fibrocartilage juncture where the pubic bones join in the front of those 2 coxal bones. Okay, so here is where we have your fused sacral bones, and then your iliac crest. Okay, and here is the pubic symphysis here in the front. Okay, so your SI joint, your sacroiliac joint, is here and here, where those coxal bones are articulating with the sacrum. Okay, so there are 2 different areas of the pelvis. We call them the greater or the false pelvis and the lesser or the true pelvis. And they're kind of 2 different diameters that the pelvis has. And the greater pelvis is up higher and the lesser pelvis is down lower. If a baby is being born, it first passes through the pelvic inlet, which is made of the greater false pelvis, and then the baby ultimately passes through the pelvic outlet, which is the narrower opening. Okay, so if we look at this picture here, the baby will be passing through head down. It's going to go through the greater pelvis first, and then the lesser pelvis second, and the lesser pelvis is the narrower place as it exits the birth canal. So 3 distinct features of the hip bone that I'd like you guys to know. Okay, so the iliac crest is kind of the topmost part of the hip. The acetabulum is the hip socket. This is where the femur articulates. This is the socket of the ball and socket joint. And then the obturator foramen is the large hole that we see below the acetabulum, and we'll look at this in just a second. The hip bone is actually fused of 3 bones that are separate in childhood, and then they fuse together and are 1 bone in the adult: the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. Okay, so here is the iliac crest, okay, and it is on the ilium. And then here, this socket area is the acetabulum, and it's actually made from the area that's fused, all three, the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. And then down here, we have this large opening, the obturator foramen. Those are the three parts that I'd like you guys to know. The pelvis is a very complex bone, lots of different features to it, but those are the three I'd like you to remember. So again, ilium, ischium, and pubis are the three bones that make up the hip. Okay, so this is a very important slide. I'd like you guys to take a close look at this one. So males tend to have heavier pelvises with thicker bone. The walls of those flat bones are thicker. Females tend to have wider and more shallow pelvic bones, and this allows them to successfully go through pregnancy and childbirth. They have a larger pelvic inlet, the upper portion, and that allows for the infant's head to pass through. Okay, so here is another picture, and we have the SI joint here where the sacrum and the ilium come together, and the acetabulum here on the sides where the femur articulates. Okay, so now we're talking about the lower limb that we commonly call the leg, also 30 bones here. So we have the thigh, and this is the femoral region, contains the femur and the patella. Okay, so the femur is the longest bone in the body, the strongest bone in the body in most cases. It goes from your hip to your knee, and then your patella is your kneecap. And then from the knee to the ankle, we have two bones there. We have the tibia and the fibula. And the tibia is the one that bears weight, that you put pressure on when you walk. The fibula does not bear any weight. And then we have the tarsal region, that is your ankle. Your metatarsals are the 5 long bones in your foot, and then 14 phalanges in your toes. So talking about these bones in a little bit more detail, okay, femur, longest, strongest bone in the body, articulates with the acetabulum. That's something important for you guys to know. We have lots of features of the femur that allow for muscle attachment. These things here are good to review. Don't spend a lot of time memorizing them for the exam, though. Okay, so up here we have the head of the femur that's going to articulate with the acetabulum of the pelvis. Longest, strongest bone, we have the surface down here that's going to articulate with the tibia and the patella. So the patella is made of cartilage at birth. It ossifies between ages 3 and 6. It articulates with the femur and also the tibia. Okay, so here we're going to compare the tibia and the fibula. Okay, so like I said a minute ago, the tibia is the weight-bearing bone. It has several features that if you are going to go on to study orthopedics, very important for you to know. For exam 2, not so important. The fibula is much smaller. It's more slender. It's thinner. Doesn't bear any weight. Okay. It does join the tibia by a membrane. Okay, so here is the tibia and fibula. So here's the tibia, much bigger, thicker, and the fibula here is much thinner and smaller. Okay, so tarsal bones are in your ankle. They are significantly different from your carpal bones. Okay, your carpal bones are meant to have a huge range of motion. Your tarsal bones have developed and evolved to bear weight. Our wrists don't really bear weight. Okay, so calcaneus is the largest tarsal bone that's in your heel. The talus is the kind of highest up, most proximal tarsal bone. And then we have 2 rows of tarsal bones below the calcaneus and talus. The metatarsals are the long bones of your foot, and your phalanges, same name for your fingers and your toe, phalanges, are in your toes. Okay, so here is your calcaneus. Calcaneus is here. That's your heel. Your talus is your uppermost of your tarsal bones. And then we have the 6 remaining tarsal bones that are in the top of your foot, very close to your ankle. And then we have the metatarsals, the long bones, and the phalanges are your toes. So early in embryonic development, around 7 weeks post-fertilization, we start to see limbs being able to rotate. They're much more flexible at that point. And the foundations of adult joint directions are formed at that time. Okay, so here we can see a little bit of embryonic development and how the limbs are rotated into the body. So the foot has some interesting structures that allow it to bear the weight of your whole body. The sole of the foot is not flat on the ground. It has the arch, so you guys are familiar with. It's actually a series of 3 arches. Okay, so the first arch is made from your big toes metatarsal and your third toes metatarsal, and then the tarsal bones. And then we have the lateral arch that goes from your heel to your little toe. And then the transverse arch is across the middle of your foot. So we can look at the 3-dimensional structure of your foot as 3 separate arches. Okay, so here is that first arch going from the tarsal bones all the way to the big toe. And then we have from the tarsal bone to the smallest toe, and then the transverse arch across the middle of the foot where the 6 smaller tarsal bones are.